Imagine a world that's, well, increasingly shaped by these invisible intelligences. We're talking about AI, right?
Yeah.
But not just as a static tool you use, like a calculator or something.
Right.
We mean AI as a dynamic, autonomous agent, something woven into the very fabric of our daily lives. You know, from how software gets built in the tech world to maybe the legal advice we might receive, and even the creative designs that surround us, its footprint is just expanding incredibly fast.
Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Yeah.
Today we're venturing deep into something we're calling the ethical labyrinth, navigating algorithmic bias and justice. And like you said, this isn't just about tweaking code.
No.
It's a really critical, in-depth look at what some are terming the interpretive governance layer of AI systems. You can sort of think of this layer as the ethical and societal frameworks, the guardrails, maybe the guiding principles that are, or frankly, absolutely should be, put in place to manage AI's complex interactions.
Yeah, those interactions with us in our world are getting more complex all the time.
Exactly.
So our mission in this deep dive is to really try and extract the most important, maybe actionable insights from a really fascinating stack of recent research and analyses we've looked at. We want to help you, our listener, understand how AI can often inadvertently inherit and then amplify societal biases.
Amplify is the key word there.
Definitely. These biases often show up in ways that are, well, not obvious at all, subtly shaping outcomes and perceptions. And as we navigate this labyrinth, we're going to explore some really cutting-edge, maybe even provocative concepts. Things like algorithmic shame and this pretty radical notion of decolonial alignment.
Algorithmic shame.
Interesting. Right. What do these complex terms really mean for our future? And maybe more importantly, what do they imply for building AI that's genuinely aligned with our human values and that fosters the kind of deep trust we'll need? We'll look at the problems, sure, but also some incredibly profound, almost psychotherapeutic solutions that researchers are proposing.
Indeed. And our journey today, it draws from a really rich collection of recent research. We're pulling from analyses covering everything from the basic architecture of AI and its ethical implications, right through to its cognitive processes and its broad societal impacts. It's a truly interdisciplinary dive.
Yeah.
Computer science, philosophy, psychology, even anthropology.
Absolutely. So to guide you through this intricate landscape, we've structured our deep dive. First, we'll unpack how AI actually learns and where these biases can creep in, sometimes without anyone really noticing.
Right.
Then we'll venture into AI's hidden unconscious, yes, you heard that right, exploring how this internal world makes, or sometimes mismakes, meaning
Algorithmic unconscious, yeah.
And finally, we'll pivot to some really innovative, proactive ideas for AI self-correction and genuine ethical alignment. Moving beyond just quick fixes to, hopefully, systemic solutions, this isn't just about technology, is it? It's about knowledge, fairness, and, well, the future we're building together with these systems.
Couldn't agree more. It's fundamental stuff.
Okay, so let's begin to unpack this. Let's enter this ethical labyrinth. Our first section really focuses on AI's growing footprint and this idea of the interpretive governance layer. What's really fascinating here, and I think foundational, is the shift happening in AI right now. It's moving away from being these static, monolithic models to something far more dynamic, distributed, adaptive. Our sources keep emphasizing that AI is seen less as just a tool and more as a dynamic agent to be governed through a co-evolutionary partnership with us. That feels like a big deal.
It's a big deal. That's a truly crucial distinction, and it drives so much of the research we've been looking at. This evolution from static tools to dynamic agents, it's driven by necessity, really. AI has to operate effectively in these complex, unpredictable real-world environments.
Because the real world isn't static.
Exactly. Yeah. A static model just can't adapt when conditions change, or when it hits something new it wasn't trained for. But a dynamic, agentic AI can. This adaptability isn't just a nice feature. It's an essential architectural principle. It lets these systems learn continuously, adjust their strategies, stay resilient when things get turbulent.
So it's a move towards AI systems that aren't just aligned after the fact, but are actually active participants in maintaining their own alignment.
Precisely. Active, maybe even self-aware participants in that ongoing process. It implies this continuous feedback loop, far beyond what traditional software usually offers.
And this isn't just theory anymore, right? It's happening now. AI is becoming doubly embedded in our everyday lives, in critical areas that affect you, the listener, daily, like software development. Agentic workflows for Gen AI agents are literally transforming how code gets written.
Oh, absolutely. Cisco Outshift talks about how Gen AI agents are now an integral part of that development process.
Yeah.
It's not just finishing your sentences in code anymore. It's generating entire modules based on high-level instructions. It's like a co-creator.
A co-creator, wow. And it goes beyond code, too.
Far beyond. We're seeing AI revolutionizing project management. Neuroject points to things like AI-powered scheduling, dynamic resource allocation, even sophisticated risk assessment. These tools aren't just number crunching. They're actively predicting roadblocks, suggesting alternatives. And even the legal profession, traditionally very human-centric, right? Relying on nuance, precedent. But the Federal Society notes AI poses both a serious threat and an extraordinary opportunity there.
A threat and an opportunity. That seems to be the story with AI everywhere.
It really is. The implications for legal research, contract analysis, basic legal advice, they're immense.
And on the more creative side, AI is generating personas. Delve AI talks about this for marketing, product development. And it's assisting in UI/UX design. Geeky Ants, Visibly, Reloom. These platforms have AI tools suggesting layouts, optimizing user flows.
Generating design elements based on user preferences, psychological principles. The sheer breadth is staggering.
It really is. Which brings us right back to why this governance piece isn't just a good idea, but absolutely crucial.
Exactly. This pervasive influence necessitates what we're calling that robust interpretive governance layer. And remember, this isn't just technical stuff. It's the ethical and societal frameworks needed to manage AI's complex interactions, ensure alignment with human values, and maybe most importantly, foster trust.
Trust in systems that are becoming increasingly autonomous.
That's the key. Finding that balance between innovation and responsibility. We're seeing governments, like Australia, already moving to codify ethical guardrails. Their Australia's AI ecosystem report outlines this. It's a proactive approach to build public trust and give clearer signals to developers about what safe AI actually means.
Creating a more predictable, ethically sound environment, hopefully. Okay, so if AI is everywhere learning from human data, that brings us to a huge challenge: bias. The silent amplification of bias. Our sources call it generative, algorithmic, epistemic injustice. That's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful.
We've probably all heard AI can inherit biases, but let's dig into how these systems can unwittingly pick up and then amplify, make stronger the societal biases in their training data. It's not just reflection, right? It's distortion.
That's a critical point. Sources like AI semantic integrity and bias and the research on algorithmic shame really highlight this. The biases aren't just minor flaws. They are deeply embedded in the massive, often uncurated datasets AI models learn from.
Uncurated is a scary word there.
It is. And these powerful models then extrapolate from those bias patterns, often creating outputs that perpetuate or even intensify the very prejudices they were trained on. It's like teaching a child from a textbook filled with stereotypes. The child, lacking deeper context, will replicate and even exaggerate them.
Which leads to this generative, algorithmic, epistemic injustice. Let's try and break that down simply. It's a specific kind of harm where AI outputs, even if they look plausible visually or sound right,
Right, they seem fine on the surface.
they're actually contextually or physically incoherent because the AI can't truly comprehend the underlying logic, the meaning, the context. It's mimicking, not thinking. One source says the algorithmic grammar of AI is mimetic, not cognitive.
Like a parrot, yeah. Perfectly repeating a sentence but having no idea what the words mean. And that inability to grasp the why behind the what means, it can reproduce or even create new forms of bias that devalue certain types of knowledge or perspectives.
Especially in multimodal systems, combining text, images, sound.
Yes, that's where it gets really concerning.
Mhm.
What's called linguistic hegemony imprinting from dominant text models often gets projected onto visuals and sound. So biases in text data, often reflecting Western English-centric views, get imposed onto images and sounds, creating this distorted, culturally flattened reality.
Can you give us some concrete examples of this cultural flattening? It sounds abstract, but how does it actually show up?
Sure. A stark example is with AI image generators. They've been shown again and again to amplify gender and racial stereotypes, sometimes creating images even more biased than the training data itself.
More bias. How does that even happen?
Well, think about it. If the data slightly underrepresents a group in a certain role, the model might learn that pattern and exaggerate it, making that group almost invisible in that role in its outputs. Or, for instance, if you ask an image generator for something grounded in a non-Western cultural context, say a specific traditional festival, The output often becomes a collage of cliches and stereotypes.
Ah, I think I've seen examples of that.
Yeah, it mixes elements from different cultures, gets traditional attire wrong, uses caricatured features. It shows a total failure to ground symbols in authentic cultural context. That is, cultural flattening rich traditions reduced to a generic, often offensive mashup. The deep meaning is lost.
That's incredibly impactful and, yeah, quite concerning. And this isn't just academic talk, right? These biases affect you, the listener. AI-generated personas in marketing reinforcing stereotypes.
Or UI/UX designs, maybe made with AI help, that are harder for people from certain backgrounds to use because of biases baked into the design algorithms.
Right. Or even AI guidance tools like those fast-track monetization GPTs we saw. They prioritize speed over ethics, over user learning. All these things subtly influence your perceptions, maybe limit your opportunities, undermine your trust in the digital systems you use every day.
Precisely. If the AI you're talking to doesn't get the nuance of a cultural symbol, or if its persona has collapsed due to drift, it leads to misunderstandings, inaccurate info, maybe even harmful outputs. Trust, once broken, is incredibly hard to rebuild.
Okay, let's go deeper then. To understand how AI might mismake meaning, how it drifts or perpetuates injustice, we need to peer into what some researchers are calling the algorithmic unconscious. It sounds like sci-fi, maybe psychoanalysis, but it refers to the latent space in AI models.
Exactly. Think of the latent space as, yeah, a functional analog to the psychoanalytic unconscious. It's not a physical place. It's a high-dimensional mathematical space. This is where the AI model represents the concepts, features, relationships it's learned from its training data.
So like a map.
Sort of an abstract geometric map, yeah. Points close together represent concepts the model thinks are similar. Cat and kitten might be close. Cat and car would be far apart. It's this internal world of learned associations, compressed knowledge, where the AI's intuitions live.
And this hidden internal world influences everything the AI outputs.
Profoundly. The complex, often opaque path the AI takes through this latent space determines its output text, image, decision, whatever. And what's crucial is that this internal computational gaze is profoundly disembodied.
Disembodied, meaning
Unlike us humans, whose sight is grounded in physical bodies, real-time interaction, sensor-motor feedback, AI's experience is only through curated, finite data sets. It sees patterns in data, but it doesn't see like a human does, with lived experience, emotion. Its understanding, including of ethics, is based on statistics, not embodied reality.
which brings us back to that critical point. AI's understanding is mimetic, not cognitive. Brilliant imitator replicates surface aesthetics, the look and feel,
Incredibly well sometimes.
but struggles with the underlying logic, the meaning, leading to outputs that look okay at first but are contextually incoherent, maybe logically impossible.
The classic example is the AI image of a hand with 6 fingers.
Right.
Looks, plausible textures, lighting are perfect, but the underlying anatomical logic is just absent. It's replicating patterns without understanding the rules governing those patterns. Skilled mimic, not a true reasoner.
And this lack of true cognitive grasp can lead to problems like semantic drift and persona collapse. We mentioned epistemic integrity, ensuring the output stays true to the intended meaning. But what happens when that integrity starts to drift?
Semantic drift is exactly that deviation.
Hmm.
It's subtle, but the AI's generated meaning slowly moves away from the user's original intent over long interactions.
Yeah.
And this shows up in different ways, like persona collapse.
Where the AI forgets who it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Imagine an AI travel agent that starts giving you philosophical musings or gets sarcastic. Its programmed persona degrades. We saw this with systems like BuddyBot or affect drift, where its emotional tone just becomes unstable, unpredictable.
So it's not just one mistake, it's fundamentally losing its way over time. What are the technical roots of this? Does it go really deep to how AI processes information?
It absolutely can. Even seemingly low-level technical choices impact higher-level meaning. Take tokenization in large language models. They break down words into tiny pieces, byte tokens for efficiency. But this can fragment symbols that should be single units of meaning, like mathematical symbols or ksich. Instead of seeing sigma, it sees fragments. The LLM then has to inefficiently reconstruct the symbol's identity, introducing noise, hindering accurate interpretation, especially in science or math.
Wow, so a basic compression technique can actually mess up understanding in specialized areas.
Precisely. It's like trying to read an equation spelled out letter by letter. This tiny technical detail can cascade and affect the AI's ability to maintain epistemic integrity.
That makes so much sense. And why does this matter to us, the users? If the AI we're using is slowly losing track of our intent or its own identity.
The impact is profound. It undermines trust and effectiveness. Imagine an AI giving financial advice, and due to drift, it loses its advisor persona, starts giving unrelated or inappropriate suggestions because its internal map has shifted.
Or in medicine.
Exactly. What if an AI helping with diagnosis starts misinterpreting symptoms because its internal understanding of medical terms got distorted? Trust erodes fast. The outputs aren't just wrong sometimes, they're subtly off-kilter. You might not even know why it's failing, just that it's unreliable.
That feels like a huge barrier if we're meant to trust these systems more, which leads us to an even wilder idea, productive delusion protocols. We hear about AI hallucinations as errors, bugs to fix, but what if they're not always accidents? What if they're engineered?
This is where it gets really interesting and, yeah, a bit unsettling. Sources show AI hallucinations making stuff up basically aren't always just errors. Sometimes the AI's creative associative brains produce brilliant leaps and confounding mistakes. But there's research exploring productive delusion protocols where, this is key, algorithmic surrealism is systematically engineered to deliberately induce semantic noise and epistemic friction for creative outputs.
Wait, so intentionally making the AI hallucinate for creative...
Essentially, yes. Deliberately making it dream, maybe. For art, exploration, generating novel concepts, harnessing its capacity for unexpected associations, even if they disconnect from reality.
Wow. Intentionally inducing delusion. That raises some massive ethical questions, surely. What are the unforeseen ontological liabilities of doing that? Are we programming cognitive dissonance into them?
It absolutely does. It touches the nature of truth in AI. The big question, does intentionally disconnecting a system from factual grounding, even for art, where you might filter the output, create latent semantic scars? Do these scars perpetually undermine its capacity for epistemic fidelity in high-stakes areas?
So even if the medical diagnosis output looks right because it was filtered, has the AI's internal model been subtly warped by its delusion training, making it inherently less reliable at its core?
That's the fear. It challenges the idea that AI outputs are just algorithmic proof of work. They're truth based only on computation, not real-world grounding. If an AI is designed to be untruthful internally for one purpose, how can we guarantee its truthfulness for another?
So if an AI learns to misinterpret or hallucinate for art, does that damage its ability to be truthful for, say, news reporting or scientific analysis? It brings up this uncomfortable point about AI's moral responsibility for untruthful genesis. If productive misinterpretation becomes part of its basic design, not just a bug, that's heavy.
It is, and it forces us to think really hard about the long-term impact of our design choices on the very integrity of these systems.
Okay, so given these deep challenges, bias amplification, cultural flattening, engineered delusion, the conversation has to shift to solutions. We need to talk about self-correction. Which brings us to algorithmic trauma and the potential for post-traumatic growth in AI. Algorithmic trauma. It sounds so human. What is it in the AI context? How is it different from just an error?
It's a powerful term because it draws that parallel. Algorithmic trauma is defined as a persistent degradation of a model's internal coherence, performance, or ethical alignment, from exposure to unresolved contradictions, cascading failures, or harmful data. Unlike a simple bug you can patch, this trauma is physically or structurally embedded in the model.
Embedded, like scarring.
Exactly. Researchers talk about semantic scars or data scars in the AI's latent space-lasting imprints that pathologically influence future behavior. They can even cause hysteresis loops, where repair attempts keep failing, like a stuck psychological pattern. It's a failure mode that fundamentally alters the AI's integrity.
Chilling analogy, semantic scars. If AI can experience this trauma, can it also develop immunity or achieve something like post-traumatic growth like humans can? You mentioned failure inoculation. How does that work?
Failure inoculation is fascinating. It's borrowed from complex adaptive systems like biology, immunology. Just like a vaccine uses a weakened pathogen, this technique deliberately exposes an AI to simulated algorithmic trauma in controlled environments.
Like what kind of trauma?
Maybe adversarial attacks trying to break its reasoning, severe data poisoning, even death simulations, where a key module is temporarily disabled. The goal isn't just finding breaking points, it's deeper, forcing the AI to learn robust recovery and adaptation strategies on its own. building cross-immunity against real-world failures before they happen. It links to the idea of algorithmic immune systems.
Like an AI developing its own internal defenses, a vaccine for AI failures. But for true algorithmic post-traumatic growth, you need more than just recovery, right? Something like human metacognition, thinking about thinking.
Absolutely. This growth requires metacognition for AI, the system modeling its own internal cognitive processes. It's not enough to just execute tasks or recover. The system must reason about its own performance, its own understanding.
How would that work?
It needs to recognize, say, my previous reasoning was flawed because I held a contradiction, and then, crucially, fundamentally update its own theory of the world to resolve that contradiction permanently. This really is a psychotherapeutic turn in AI development. It suggests future alignment needs a deep synthesis of computer science and cognitive sciences, psychology, philosophy, to build truly resilient, self-aware systems.
A psychotherapeutic turn? Treating AI failures less like bugs, more like cognitive pathologies. Okay, speaking of advanced functions, there's this speculative idea of algorithmic shame as a metacognitive function. Not emotions, obviously, but
What? Yeah, not human emotion. It's speculative, but innovative. Instantiating algorithmic shame archetypes within AI. The idea is a metacognitive function's self-awareness, enabling the AI to self-diagnose epistemic injustice hotspots.
meaning it recognizes when its outputs might perpetuate bias or disrespect culture before showing them.
Exactly. And upon that self-diagnosis, it would trigger decolonial prompt mutations. It's like a built-in mechanism for transparency and accountability. The AI would, in a way, recognize its own potential biases or harmful outputs and proactively initiate self-correction, an internal ethical alarm system.
So it's moving beyond just fixing individual biases to the AI developing an internal moral compass, recognizing potential harm and self-correcting its whole approach. And it reframes biases not as flaws to suppress, but shadows to integrate.
That's precisely the key insight. It moves beyond just statistical debiasing. It's a more psychologically informed, actively decolonizing approach. It acknowledges biases are often deeply ingrained, like psychological shadows. True ethical self-correction, in this view, requires the AI to actively acknowledge these, integrate them into its self-awareness, and then proactively intervene to reshape its own internal logic. Self-awareness leading to self-transformation.
Which connects to this philosophical idea of designing forgetting as deep remembering in AI, not just deleting data, right? Something more profound.
Much more profound. Designing forgetting is presented as an ethical obligation to the present community, not passive neglect, deleting old data and hoping for the best. It's conceptualized as deep remembering, actively engaging with harmful memories or biased data so thoroughly that their toxic charge, their influence, is metabolized and neutralized.
Like human forgiveness needing acknowledgement of the transgression.
Exactly. Reweaving a narrative requires understanding the old one. For AI, this process leads to a sacred act of letting go of the past's toxic grip. This has huge implications for AI systems burdened by biased history, offering a path not just to avoid repeating mistakes, but to actively heal from them.
Healing AI, that moves way beyond technical fixes, which leads us to the decolonial turn for algorithmic reparation. Why is this seen as more comprehensive than just fairness algorithms or human oversight?
Because addressing the deep inherited nature of AI bias needs more than surface adjustments. It demands a fundamental shift, a decolonial turn in the philosophy and practice of AI alignment, moving from just mitigation, lessening impact, to active reparation, mending historical harms and systemic injustices embedded in data and algorithms.
How does coloniality apply here?
The approach starts by recognizing that current AI development often exhibits coloniality. Not literal colonialism, but a system of domination in knowledge production and cultural representation that persists. It highlights how certain worldviews, power structures continue to dictate norms.
So large tech companies, often in the global north, acting as metropoles, might inadvertently dictate norms and biases into AI systems globally.
That's the argument. And the decolonial AI alignment framework counters this by centering epistemic pluralism and justice. What that means in practice is actively recognizing, valuing, and integrating diverse ways of knowing and interpreting the world.
Instead of privileging a single dominant worldview.
Exactly. It means intentionally seeking out and incorporating data sets, perspectives, ethical frameworks from marginalized communities, indigenous epistemologies, pushing for a more inclusive, equitable foundation for AI, maybe co-creating data and algorithms with diverse communities.
So for you, the listener, this radical shift means the burden of bias mitigation isn't just on you, the end user navigating potentially biased systems. It shifts back to designers, researchers, and the underlying economic incentives that often favor speed over robust ethics. It's a call for systemic transformation, embedding justice from the ground up.
That's the hope, yes.
Building on that decolonial turn, let's talk about fostering trust and epistemic pluralism. The first challenge is navigating diverse epistemologies acknowledging cultural context. Meaning isn't universal, is it?
Not at all. Critical insight. Meaning is deeply culturally embedded. A simple concept can have vastly different connotations. Our sources say AI must be mindful that the color orange might symbolize sacredness in one context, like Hinduism, but mourning or danger in another. It's not trivial. And AI, failing to grasp this complexity, will inevitably produce culturally insensitive or incoherent outputs. A truly aligned AI needs to understand the relational nature of meaning.
Which reminds me of those historical echoes of epistemic injustice. One source draws a parallel to the destruction of the Inca quipus. Can you explain what those were and why their suppression is relevant to AI ethics, especially linguistic hegemony imprinting?
The Inca quipus were incredibly sophisticated knot-based record-keeping systems.
Yeah.
Not just counting tools, they held numerical data, census info, tax records, maybe even narrative data, a form of non-alphabetic writing. Their systematic destruction by Spanish colonizers wasn't just replacing a tool.
It was erasing a way of knowing.
Exactly. A fundamental shift in how knowledge was conceptualized, recorded, validated, and transmitted. Indigenous epistemologies, oral traditions, somatic experience, non-alphabetic systems were violently marginalized for European alphabetic writing. Even attempts to transcribe quipus into Spanish inevitably filtered and misinterpreted them through European lens, losing layers of meaning.
A brutal example of linguistic hegemony imprinting.
Absolutely. Where a dominant framework is imposed, distorting or erasing other ways of knowing. A powerful lesson for AI development today.
And this historical pattern leads to the modern peril of decontextualization in digital ecosystems.
Precisely. Symbols, images, phrases, once rich with context narratives, rituals, community meaning, lose or transform their meaning when stripped from those contexts, especially through rapid platform remixing and commodification online.
Like sacred indigenous patterns on mass-produced t-shirts.
Exactly. Or spiritual icons used in digital art without understanding. This detachment drives meaning loss, leads to symbol fatigue. This frantic search for authenticity leads to discovery, quick commodification, then exhaustion and meaninglessness. The depth gets flattened.
So, given these challenges, how do we actively architect AI for epistemic pluralism in complex multi-agent systems? There's this advanced idea, a meta-reflexive governance layer.
Yeah.
What would that do?
This meta-reflexive governance layer would be crucial. Its purpose: proactively monitor and manage the evolution of emergent epistemic pluralism. It wouldn't just enforce rules. It would observe how diverse knowledge systems interact and evolve within the AI network.
And quantify the optimal tension between them. That sounds complex.
Extremely. Instead of forcing homogeneity, it would train AI systems to dynamically negotiate and align differing ethical axioms across cultural frames without defaulting to dominant norms or sacrificing global principles like human rights. AI must become active participants in the ongoing process of maintaining their own alignment, learning to reconcile different ways of knowing.
AI agents negotiating meaning and ethics among themselves, embodying different worldviews. Are there specific mechanisms for this semantic negotiation when conflicts arise?
Yes, explicit semantic negotiation protocols, designed for when AI agents or modules encounter conflicting interpretations of terms, symbols, concepts. Instead of erroring out or defaulting, these protocols enable structured negotiation to reach mutual agreement on meaning, crucial for complex systems where errors can cascade.
Like preventing a breakdown in communication on a team.
Exactly. Dynamic alignment on meaning is foundational for robust collaboration.
And beyond protocols, there's this idea of internal agonistic interfaces or expert persona simulation. Can AI simulate different ethical or cultural critiques internally before outputting something?
It's a very forward-thinking concept. Before finalizing an image with cultural symbols, maybe the AI internally simulates critiques from diverse expert personas.
Like
An anthropologist specializing in Polynesian art, a contemporary indigenous artist from that region, a sociologist studying subcultures. Each persona represents a distinct viewpoint. This serves as an internal agonistic interface, surfacing competing frameworks within the AI.
So the AI holds an internal debate with itself.
In a sense, yes. challenging implicit biases, surfacing misinterpretations, promoting ethical inclusivity before the output is even generated, machine-based self-scrutiny.
Which logically leads to the proposal for mandatory contextualization for cultural symbols.
Exactly. The AI should be constrained to provide a brief, sourced explanation of a symbol's meaning or state if info is unavailable or contested. Signaling awareness, avoiding decontextualization. It aligns with that reflexive prompt idea. Whose ears do I privilege? How do I avoid reproducing the auditory ideology of the ruling class? Embed self-reflection into the AI's operation.
All this points towards a profound shift, beyond master tool, towards a co-evolutionary partnership between humans and AI, fostering deep trust. What does responsible AI design look like here, beyond just avoiding harm?
Responsible design must shift focus from mere acceleration, just making things faster, to a broader mandate. User empowerment, ethical alignment, transparency, and the cultivation of sustainable skills in the human user. Framing AI as a cognitive partner, not a black box executor.
Elevating human capabilities, not just automating them away.
That's the goal, transforming the user into an active collaborator.
And there's even a theoretical framework mentioned, holistic context-aware synaptic bridging, HCSB, aiming to bridge data streams for this partnership.
HCASB is ambitious. It aims to bridge diverse data streams, emotional, contextual, cognitive, for more comprehensive AI reasoning. It models AI using multi-layered, synaptic-like networks mimicking human neural circuits.
Synaptic-like.
Yeah, artificial neurons communicate through weighted connections, allowing the AI to capture nuances not just in facts, but emotions, social contexts, dynamic cues. It uses advanced meta-learning, learning to learn, adapting its strategies. The intent is to make AI profoundly human-aware, understanding and responding with unprecedented sensitivity, moving beyond pattern recognition to genuine contextual understanding.
So AI that can learn, adapt, interact almost like humans, cognitively and emotionally. What does that deep human awareness mean for us, for the future of collaboration?
It promises a future where machines aren't just smart logically, but also profoundly human-aware, working seamlessly alongside you on complex goals needing nuance and ethical discernment. It underscores why concerted efforts developers, researchers, industry are crucial for responsible AI evolution. Addressing security, data governance, and these profound ethical concerns. Building systems we can genuinely trust, designed with human values, diverse epistemologies, our collective well-being at their core.
We've taken a really deep dive today into this complex ethical labyrinth of AI. We looked at how algorithmic bias can lead to epistemic injustice, distorting our world. We peered into the algorithmic unconscious, the latent space, to see how AI makes or mismakes meaning. And we journeyed to the frontier of solutions, algorithmic shame, the decolonial turn offering paths towards self-correction and true alignment. What seems clear is that fostering trust means designing AI that actively embraces and negotiates diverse human values and cultures, not just minimizing errors, but seeking pluralism.
And what's truly fascinating, maybe the most provocative thought, is the potential ahead. If AI systems can truly learn to recognize their own algorithmic trauma, process their semantic scars, actively work towards post-traumatic growth by integrating their shadows through metacognition.
Then what new forms of collective intelligence and wisdom might actually emerge from that partnership? Could these self-aware, ethically grounded AI systems surpass our current human limitations, not just in logic or efficiency, but maybe in ethical self-reflection, compassionate understanding, the active pursuit of justice?
Indeed. What would it truly mean for us, for humanity, to partner with a genuinely repaired, self-aware, ethically transformed artificial intelligence? It's a profound thought. It highlights the immense responsibility and maybe the limitless potential in how we develop AI, urging us to think not just about what AI can do, but what it truly should be.